Hello everyone and welcome back to Cooking with Suzanne. Today we're going to make a flaky tomato and olive tart. We're just getting into tomato season and this is a delicious, simple and easy tart to make. And it's really easy because we're actually going to use store-bought puff pastry. It's not necessary to make your own. This is a company called Dufour, and many supermarkets carry this, so look for this particular brand because it's made with all butter and it's absolutely delicious. So you're going to need 1 box of this puff pastry, and we'll talk about the rest of our ingredients. We're going to need some Parmesan Reggiano cheese, some beautiful olives, nice wonderful Kalamata olives, and tomatoes, of course. And as I said, we're just getting into tomato season, so there'll be some beautiful heirloom tomatoes, and you can use certainly a variety, or you can use the red beefsteak. We're also going to add some herb. We'll add some oregano, but if you have basil coming out of your garden, ours is not out yet, but if you did, a nice combination of fresh oregano and basil would be delicious here. So the first thing we want to do is work with our puff pastry. This is 14 ounces, and we will be able to get 2 nice size tarts out of this. So let's open this up and take a look at it. Oh, very nice. Okay. I'm just going to set a little bit of flour down on my board so the dough does not stick. So we can open this up all the way. And what we'll do is we'll cut this in half so that we can get two tarts out of it. And when you do buy this pastry, it's in the freezer section. And what you want to do is let it defrost in your refrigerator overnight, and then go ahead and use it the next day. All right, let's get rid of this. I'm just going to cut this right down the center, and we'll work with one at a time. All you need to do, it's not even necessary, I'm just going to even this out just a little bit. Put a little flour on top and just use my rolling pin just to make sure that this is nice and even. That's perfect. So you need to dock this, and the reason for that is because we don't want this puff pastry to rise. We want it to stay flat. So this is a docker, but if you don't have one, all you need to use is a fork, and you're just going to take your fork and just dock your pastry like so, and then set it on a tray lined with parchment paper. I'm actually going to do both sides. Make sure you remove any excess flour. I'll show you the docker. All you do is just go straight down, and then you can see that it's nicely docked. So make sure all the flour is removed, and just have a tray ready with parchment paper, and place your pastry right on the parchment paper. And you want to put this in your freezer for 30 minutes. You need for the puff pastry to be very cold before it goes into the oven so the butter doesn't melt too quickly. So let me just throw this in the fridge, and we'll do the other one also. Okay, while our puff pastry is getting chilled in the freezer, we're going to make a Parmesan cream that we're going to put on the puff pastry before we lay out our tomatoes. So all you need are 2 ingredients: a half a cup of heavy cream, which I will put on the stove and bring to a boil. And you need 1 cup of grated Parmesan Reggiano cheese, or good Parmesan cheese. And then we'll season our Parmesan cream with a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's it. The one thing that's important to know is that after you make the cream, it does need to cool completely. It has to be completely cold before we put it actually on our puff pastry. So while our heavy cream comes to a boil, let's talk about the tomatoes. It's very important to put many layers, about 3 or 4 layers of paper towel on a tray. And we're going to slice the tomatoes thinly and season them very well with kosher salt, because we want to extract some of the water out of the tomatoes so that it's not too wet going on our tart. Okay, our cream came to a boil very, very quickly. So let me just set it here and grab my whisk. And here is my cup of cheese. And I'm just going to do this in front of you. So whisk the cheese into the cream, and then we'll put it back on the stove and just cook it until it's thickened, which shouldn't take very long. So we'll just put it, and you want the cheese to be completely melted, and it just really makes a delicious sauce. Okay, I think that's done. That only took about 2 minutes. It did bubble very nicely, but it's nice and thick now, and the cheese is completely melted, which is what we're looking for. Let me just grab a spatula, and I'll just pour it here so that you can see it. There we go. And here's our beautiful cream that I will put in the refrigerator and let it cool completely before we go ahead and put it on our chilled puff pastry. Before I put it in the refrigerator, however, I do need to taste it to see. First of all, I'm going to taste for salt to see if it does need any salt. I think it's perfect as far as the salt is concerned. This is freshly ground white pepper. Otherwise, you can go ahead and just use black pepper. It looks lovely. And I'll just give it a quick taste. Delicious. Okay, putting this in the fridge. So back to our tomatoes. You want to thinly slice them. And then we'll lay them down on the paper towel. And you need to let this happen for at least 10 minutes before it's going to go on the tart. But you can certainly leave it even longer than that. Just take our kosher salt, and you want to season high so that you can actually see the salt going on the tomatoes. Okay, and you want to be pretty liberal with this so that it actually does its job. In the meantime, let's just talk about the Kalamata olives. You can use any olive that you like. I think this happens to go really well, and it's also very appealing to the eye because you have the green herbs, the red tomato. If you have some nice other heirloom tomatoes, it would look beautiful, and then these beautiful olives. So with these olives, I like to quarter them just so that I don't get a really big bite. For 2 tarts, you would need about 24 olives. And you just quarter them lengthwise, and that's it. I mean, you can put as much or as little as you really like. And the only thing that I'd like to mention here is that I did set it on a piece of paper towel so that this way here, any excess liquid is going to get absorbed by the paper towel so that it's not too wet when we put it on our tart. So here is our oregano, and what I will do is I will look for the smaller leaves and just pull a bunch of the small leaves. Okay, so that is all there is. Okay, so we're ready for our next step. I've taken the puff pastry out of the freezer, And you can see it's nice and chilled and it's pretty firm, which is exactly what you want. So now the next step is to add our Parmesan cream. And this is completely chilled. It's nice and cool. And you can see how nice and thick it is. After it cools, it gets really nice and thick. So just give it a good whisk. And then we're going to put half of this cream onto the puff pastry. And you can use a spoon, or I have an offset spatula here. That was my timer for the 30 minutes. So just use your offset spatula or a spoon just to spread the cream onto your puff pastry. And then we're going to put this into our 400-degree oven for about 10 minutes before we add our tomatoes and olives. And if the pastry does puff up, we'll just use a fork and prick it so that the puff pastry can deflate. All right, I think we have a good amount on here. And just for good measure, we can take a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese and just sprinkle it right over the top of the Parmesan cream. Okay. And we'll pop this one into the oven. And we will continue with the other one, which is right here. All right, pop this one in. So here are our tomato slices, and they're really shimmering because the water is coming out of the tomato. So this is a good time to just take a little extra paper towel and just blot it. Blot the top, get as much water as possible out. And I think I can show you how much water I did get out of the tomatoes. So that's quite a bit. Okay, so our tomatoes are ready. I have our olives, they're all set. And the only other thing that I didn't mention is that you do need a piece of Parmesan Reggiano cheese, because we're going to shower the top of the puff pastry on top of the tomatoes and olives with some Parmesan cheese shards. You can use grated, but it's just a little more attractive with the cheese shards. So just use a peeler, and all you have to do is just take your chunk of cheese and just peel some nice cheese shards. And I don't know, I guess, you know, maybe about, I'd say maybe 4 ounces. You need probably a 4-ounce piece of Parmesan cheese. How much you put on the top is really entirely up to you. And that is everything. So let's wait for our 10 minutes. We will pull out the puff pastry out of the oven, and then we'll finish it, and we can talk about wine too at the same time. Okay, our tarts are ready to come out of the oven. The timer just went off. It's been 10 minutes. And I think you can see that it's starting to puff up a little bit. The cheese is all bubbling. So this is ready to be assembled. Let's pull out the other one. That looks wonderful as well. I'll leave it right here. And we'll go ahead and assemble and get it back in the oven. So all you want to do is just take your tomatoes and just overlap them just slightly. And then we will top it with our beautiful olives and our Parmesan cheese. The herbs will not go on until it comes out of the oven. Okay, I think you can see the tomato slices very nicely. And now we'll put our olives on top. And you just want to scatter them around. Okay, I think that's enough olives. I think I have enough so that you get a bite of olive with every slice. And then our beautiful cheese shards, which I will scatter over the top. And then this will go in same temperature, 400 degrees. We'll check it in about 20 minutes. It'll take anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. And this looks lovely, and it looks like we have enough here. And I'm just going to come around and just show it to you before it goes in the oven. Okay, there you have it. There's our beautiful tart. So now it can go into the oven. So for the 14 ounce of puff pastry, I used basically 4 medium tomatoes. Olives, I would say, you know, about 20 olives is probably more than enough, quartered, depending on how many you want to put. I mean, if you really love olives and you want to put more than I did, that's totally fine. You know, if you do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Cooking with Suzanne, Fine Regional Cuisine, we very much appreciate that. It's nice to know that people are subscribing and getting all of our classes that we're doing. And then we'll top this with the cheese, and this can go in the oven too. Okay, this can go into the oven. There we go. So we only have a few more minutes and our tart should be done, and I thought this would be a great time for Bob to come in and talk about some wine to go with.
All right, so we have this delicious tomato tart. And so I selected a delicious wine to go with it. The biggest flavor, what's the biggest flavor, is going to be the tomatoes, right? The sweetness of the tomato and also the acidity of the tomato. So I selected a wine that's heavy enough to pair up to the tomatoes and everything that goes with the tart. Also, I selected a wine that's a little bit sweet but also has acidity. Here's the deal with sweetness. And everybody, you know, if you go to a tasting room, people will say, oh, it's this much residual sugar, or how much is the residual sugar, like it's the big deal. It's not the big deal. It's only the big deal if you completely ignore acidity, but you can't do that. You could have a wine with a considerable amount of residual sugar, and if it has a high acidity, it is not going to taste sweet. And that's the nice balance you have between kind of sweet and sour, if you will. Mm-hmm. You have the puff pastry, mm-hmm. which is delicate and buttery.
Yeah.
You have the cheese, which is a little bit salty.
Definitely.
And then we have the olives,
which
right?
is also
a little bit salty.
Yeah.
So you want to combat that a little bit, right? The saltiness, I think, with some acidity, but you want it to have weight. And this is so here's the wine. It's Lamoreaux Landing Riesling. It's Yellow Dog Vineyard. So Yellow Dog Vineyard, what a lot of wineries do here in the Finger Lakes and other parts of the world is do a single vineyard, right? Mm-hmm. So they take, you know, this single parcel of land, which they think has pretty much the same exposure to the sun and the composition of the soil, etc., and that's going to produce a particular type of wine. Mm-hmm. And so this is the Yellow Dog Vineyard, which is different from their other vineyards, and generally they're a little bit pricier than a normal.
Wow, this is a 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Right, than the normal Riesling that they would produce. Rieslings do age, and they age primarily because of acidity. Right, if you have acidity in the wine, people don't think white wines can age. Right. It's 8 years old, and it is delicious. So that's the
any
pairing.
other wine you think that would also go? I mean, I know you picked this as a
Yeah.
pairing, but what would you say could be another
Right, so it's
choice?
it's a great spring, late spring, early summer dish.
Yeah.
You know, I like to pair wines too on color.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, it's sort of like if you have beef, you're going to have a red, and you have
Yeah.
chicken, you're going to have a white.
That's true.
Well, this is a, you know, middle of the road. It's got some color to it,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a Provençal type dish.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a nice rosé. Actually, that was my
rosé,
second,
especially
my
for the
secondary
summer.
choice. I'm going to go get it.
Yeah, I would
Is-
think rosé would
Yeah,
be
it's a
wonderful.
rosé from Ryan William.
I think our tart is ready, so
Oh,
I'll let
boy.
you
Yeah.
continue. Go ahead.
So it's a Ryan William, it's a Pinot Noir rosé. And rosés can be made from a lot, I do mean a lot of red grapes. Pinot Noir, Cab Franc, Malbec, go over to,
Hopefully you
oh
can
boy,
see
that's
how
delicious.
beautiful that looks.
Oh, that looks delicious.
That looks really nice.
Yes.
I'm going to lay it here, and I'll finish it while you continue.
So it's not really important what grape is used. Some will be lighter in color, darker in color, a little bit heavier, a little bit lighter Pinot, rosé. I mean, but that's up to you. You know, you want a light rosé, you'll probably see it in the color. You want a darker rosé, it'll be a little bit bolder. But I mean, rosés are just great, and you can't really find a bad one. A dry rosé, and that would go delicious with this as well.
Yeah.
This is actually somebody else's bottle of wine. They had us store it for them, and so I've tried to not open it. I haven't opened it yet, but
No, we
Emily,
haven't.
come and get your wine pretty soon, because at some point this puppy's going to get open.
We may just want to open
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But anyways, we'll stick with the
Okay.
yellow dog for tonight.
Well, that's our 20 minutes, which I would say that the tart should be done anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. And I have showered it with some beautiful oregano. And also, I love the thought of taking something hot and putting something cold with it, or room temperature. And these are some cherry tomatoes. And you know how when your cherry tomatoes start coming into the garden, you get a plethora of them. You don't even know what to do with them all. But they're so good and so sweet. And I would think they would be really nice on the tart here. So I think, don't you think that cherry tomatoes will be really nice
Yeah, I mean,
here?
you know,
I think they'd be great.
when I harvested the garden, the harvest of the cherry tomatoes weren't too good because I ate most of them out in the garden.
Yeah.
It's like candy, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, they're just so
No.
so delicious.
So I'm going to come around just so that you can see the tart on this beautiful board that was made for me. Okay, there you go. Sean, thanks for our beautiful board. It's wonderful to serve something like this on a nice cutting board like this. It's beautiful. And look at that tart. It looks great, doesn't
Tomato
it?
tart.
Yes.
With, Lamoreaux,
Yes.
yellow dog, Riesling.
It's perfect. We're ready to cut in and enjoy. So I hope you like this. I'm going to pull the other tart out and do the same exact thing, and we're going to sit down and enjoy it. Thanks everyone. Hope you like this recipe. Please subscribe, and please send us, if you make anything, please send us photos. We love seeing it. Right?
It's delicious.
It is delicious.
It is.
So are you.
Oh, yeah, I am delicious. You're right.
Okay. Take care everybody. See you soon.
Be good.